Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save it, Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
CNC Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, CNC provides patient-centered care for your entire family. CNC Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to cover all the home teams, Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. We'll talk basketball, we'll talk football. We'll get into what's going on in the NFL. And of course, we're live from our state-of-the-art Pot Stream Production Studios on a kind of yucky day here in New Orleans, waiting on the cold front to come through. Hope you're having a good week as we get ready to talk some great sports with you here on Inside New Orleans Sports. With us today from NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, the Advocate, and also Fox 8 Sports is Jeff Duncan. Jeff, how are you, bud?
Doing good, Eric. Thanks for having me on, bud.
Always good to have you, Jeff. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with obviously with NOLA, also with Fox 8, but also got a couple books out. Tell folks about that. So they get an opportunity, maybe again, if they haven't checked those books out, maybe they can grab a copy.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, the main thing we're going to talk about today is the Saints head coaching search. I know that, so that's going to keep us busy at NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, also at Fox 8. It's been the biggest story we've had in a long time here in New Orleans, along with Drew Brees. My book actually has received a big bump.
I'm sure.
When Sean Payton retired last week, or stepped down, it's probably the better term. A lot of people interested in reading about the legacy of Sean Payton and Drew Brees. So this Payton and Brees book, the one thing I'd say, it's still available locally, so local booksellers, you can pick it up. You can get the hard copy still, but it is completely out. It's not being published anymore in hard copy. So if you can find one at the local booksellers, grab one there, because I'm out of hard copies. Only the trade paperback is left, but it's still selling really well, and I'm going to try and go around to the local booksellers and sign the ones that we have in stock, just because they're going to be hard to find right now.
Yes, and of course, a lot of the local bookstores obviously have that. Jeff, let's start with Sean Payton stepping down at 16 years as coach, 15 seasons on the field. Were you surprised?
Oh, yeah, I was definitely surprised. Talking to a lot of people close to him, I think they were surprised. I know Mickey Loomis was surprised. Gail Benson was surprised. So I think everyone was. I wasn't shocked by any means. Right. I mean, he's gone through these, end of season kind of soul searches before. He's been here 16 years. And there were just a lot of things looking back. He resigned from the competition committee. I mean, I know internally he was doing some things a little differently this season than he had done in the past as far as meetings. So there's some little breadcrumbs, if you will, that would lead you to see that this could have been the last season there. But in the end, I think he needed a break. I think he's looking forward to time away from the game. I think he's looking forward to challenge himself in the media business and TV. I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to be a hot commodity there. And I think he's kind of energized about the uncertainty of the future. And I felt like at one point this season that he just got worn down. You know, he just was not enjoying it anymore. It became really drudgery for him. And with all the COVID situations, coaching is much more difficult.
Yes.
And how much he puts in to a given game plan, we've talked about it before, how much work he puts in. It's the way he operates. It's the way Sean Payton works. Every coach doesn't work this way. And he said that at his farewell press conference, but it's his method of operation, working till 2 a.m. every night. I just think it finally took its toll on him after 16 years.
When you look at the legacy, what is the legacy of Sean Payton here in New Orleans?
Well, it's pretty vast. I mean, he's obviously the greatest coach in the history of the franchise. I think he raised the level, the standard, if you will, in the building. He changed the perception of the organization, turned them into winners, and they were now perceived as a winning, functional, successful organization. That was not the case before he and Drew Brees got here. I think his style of play, the offensive, high-powered offense that he brought here, along with Drew Brees, that set all these records and made them one of the more popular teams in the league. That changed the way the Saints were viewed. I mean, they always had defensive coaches, Jim Haslett, Mike Ditka, Jim Mora. They'd never had this kind of high-flying offensive wizardry before. Suddenly they became one of the more popular teams in the NFL, and that, I think, ultimately is traced back to Sean Payton. And the last thing I'd say about him, that the thing I think I most admired about him as a coach was his mental toughness that he instilled in his teams, his players and coaches. He refused to let them make excuses. I think sometimes that's a curse in Louisiana. I feel like we do that a lot here. We play the victim card, not just in sports, 49th in everything. So we're always victimized and we're always looking for excuses. He refused to play that. And I think that was something that is a model for everyone here, that he was not going to allow anybody to make excuses. And we saw that play out this season with how they succeeded.
There's no doubt he left the franchise better than he found it, right? Coming out of Katrina. There's no doubt. Stability, again, culture, a talent. But maybe the most important position on the field, maybe there's still a question mark there. Do you think his walking away is an indictment on how he felt about Jameis Winston, or the fact that he did not have a franchise quarterback?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about it. If he would have had, a ready-made replacement, I think it would have been much harder to walk away. But I don't necessarily think he would not have walked away. Okay. But I think it would have been harder to walk away because they would have been successful. I think losing takes a toll on him, probably more so than most coaches. And look, they're headed to a transition here. I mean, they've still got salary cap issues. There is no answer right now. Quarterback, both Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston are coming off significant injuries. We don't know their status coming back, and then the free agency market is really pretty barren. I mean, the best free agent out there is probably Jameis Winston or Teddy Bridgewater. Right. You know what you got in those two guys. But I would say, the NFC South division is pretty wide open now with Tom Brady retiring.
I agree.
But I really think this had less to do with football. Certainly didn't have anything to do with money. He's making $15 million a year. He's walking away from 3 years of that. He's got plenty of money, and he's going to make a lot of money in TV. So I really think it had more to do with personal happiness and some things away from the game.
Right. Saints fans are afraid that he'll be back very, very soon on a sideline, maybe as early as next season. Look, you know him as well as any media member here. What do you believe will do?
I don't think he knows what he's going to do. I don't think he has a plan. Matter of fact, I know he doesn't have a plan. We'll see how that plays out, whether it's 1 year, 2 years. I don't think anybody knows. I mean, Bill Cowher walked away very successful and never went back into coaching. And I think that could happen with Sean Payton. If he really likes media, I know he's going to spend a lot of time in Los Angeles. There's no doubt about that. His daughter, Megan, lives out there. That's where Fox, if he chooses to go to Fox, that's where they film. That's where they record all their broadcasts. Amazon as well. So I think he's going to spend some time out in a different part of the country. I think he's looking forward to that. He's been here 16 years. He's not from here. Right. He loves it here. I think he'll always have a touchstone here, some kind of condo.
He's got a condo, right?
Yeah, he's got a condo downtown.
Much like Breeze has got.
Right. So, I mean, they'll always be a big part of New Orleans. There's no doubt about it. But I think he's stimulated by something new. Like, this is going to be something new. And I think he said it the other day, he likes being uncomfortable. He likes that. It's good to challenge yourself. He's 58 years old. If he sits out a year or two, he comes back at a young 60. He's still going to have another decade. And I think his legacy as a coach is important to him. I think he definitely wants to be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And I don't think right now he is.
He needs one more Super Bowl, right?
I think to be a lock.
Right.
I think he's still got a strong case to be a Hall of Fame coach, but I think if he gets another Super Bowl with another franchise, it's a no-brainer.
And this is speculation on everybody's part, do you think the season's so tough, losing 8 games, thinking about the legacy down the line, had something to do with him walking away?
No, I mean, I think it probably had some factor. I don't think I'm being naive here, but I don't think it's simple as one thing or two things. I think there's a lot of things that went into this, and it's not as simple as saying the team's facing an uncertain future, and he wants to just get to a better spot. I don't think Sean Payton's ever been afraid of a challenge.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he came back here in 16 and 17, and they rebuilt the roster and had a second surge and a successful run here, and really had some bad luck along in that second period of his career. He could have easily walked away then. With the 49ers and the Rams were both very interested, so were the Colts. And there was back-channel communications with those organizations. And he stayed here. And look what happened. They had one of the best runs they've ever had.
Let's shift gears. Let's turn the page here. Mickey Loomis is now the point guy. What role do you believe he will take? He said collaborative effort yesterday a couple of times when he was asked questions. Do you think he will be making the final call, or it's going to be a collaboration of personnel directors, coaches, etc., on the future of where this team is going?
Well, I think what he means by collaborative, I think it's always been that way to some degree. I'm sure he's going to take input. I think that's the best way to collaborative input from Jeff Ireland, the assistant general manager, Kai Harley, director of administration, Mike Peyton, who's a name people need to get to know, rising star in the organization, former Tulane player, Mike Peyton, director of pro personnel, Dennis Lauscher, the president, Gail Benson. They're all going to have input, but it's going to ultimately be Mickey Loomis' decision. That's the way it was back in 2006, and I don't think there's any. And I think he's looking forward to that. Now he's got a big challenge to try and go 2 for 2 because he hit a home run on his first hire. Right.
Well, let's talk about that. They've interviewed Doug Peterson, Brian Flores, also Aaron Glenn, Darren Rizzi, and also Dennis Allen to be interviewed today. There's another candidate that he would not identify that they still have to interview. Everybody believes that they want to keep the culture together, that there's a natural succession here, maybe to a Dennis Allen. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he made a great point that they're a unique situation. Their coaching search here in New Orleans is different from a lot of the other vacancies around the league, where coaches were fired or they moved on because they weren't successful. The Saints have a successful program. I mean, they've won more games than any team in the league the last 5 years except the Kansas City Chiefs. So they want to keep the culture they have. They're not looking for an overhaul of the culture. So I think that promotes hiring from within. And certainly Dennis Allen, I think, is the leading candidate within. I think Darren Rizzi has a lot of charisma and a lot of qualities. I can see why they want to interview him as a head coach. Aaron Glenn knows this culture. But D.A. has been here for 12 seasons, is highly regarded inside the building, highly regarded outside the building around the league. He's a natural, I think, front runner for this job, and I fully expect him to get it unless one of these candidates knock their socks off or the final remaining candidate comes in and blows their doors off.
Could there be pressure from the league now to hire a minority candidate based on the Flores lawsuit and what we heard about Hugh Jackson today with the Cleveland Browns getting a bonus for losing games?
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I think the league, if they start influencing who teams want to hire, I think that's going down a difficult road. From everything I've heard, the league is not involved at all except for making sure
Compliance to the Rooney
they're complying with the Rooney Rule, which they are.
I want to get a little deeper into that in a few minutes, but let's stay Saints right now. Do you believe Pete Carmichael will be the offensive coordinator and be the play caller going forward if it is a Dennis Allen that ultimately gets the job?
I think that's a question that only Dennis Allen knows right now. I don't know if Pete Carmichael will want to do that, if he will want to be the offensive coordinator going forward, because really the offensive coordinator was Sean Payton.
Right.
And whether Dennis Allen wants Pete Carmichael to be the offensive coordinator, that's, to me, if it is Dennis Allen, is the most critical hire he has, because he is coming from a defensive background. Will the Saints, when they had Sean Payton here, they were an attractive destination for quarterbacks around the league. We saw Jameis Winston come here, Teddy Bridgewater, certainly were rumored to be a possible destination for Russ Wilson if he became available. Is that the case now if you have a defensive head coach, whether it's Dennis Allen or Brian Flores or whoever? They have to have an elite offensive coordinator, or at least a highly regarded one, I think, to be able to be in that mix again and get offensive great quarterbacks here, which is the name of the game as we see now in the playoffs.
There's no doubt. But again, if this was about continuity and keeping the culture together, the offense, again, when it's at its best, is one of the best in the NFL. Carmichael's had the play calling duties in the past. Obviously, he's in the room when they're coordinating the game plan on a game in, game out basis. Would that be a shocking departure? To me, it would be to see Carmichael go and maybe someone else move into his position.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Pete feels that way. I mean, I think this is.
You think he'd like to maybe go somewhere else and be on, for lack of a better term, start fresh? Make his own way?
Potentially, yeah. I think he could, or I think he could maybe want to stay on board here and not be the offensive coordinator. I think there's a lot of things that he's considering right now. And look, we don't know yet.
No,
we don't know who's going to get the job.
Coach. It's speculation on our part.
Yeah. I mean, but I think it wouldn't shock me at all to see Pete Carmichael on the staff and not be the offensive coordinator.
Wow, that's the first I've heard of that. That's interesting. I found it very interesting to hire. I mean, to interview Doug Peterson, who is considered an offensive genius as well.
Yeah, if we're just throwing stuff against the wall and we're speculating, what if Dennis Allen gets the job and hires Doug Peterson to be the offensive coordinator, and Pete Carmichael's on the staff as an offensive assistant? I think that is a sexy combination of, and you can attract elite quarterbacks. I'm not saying that's happened.
No,
completely
that's speculation.
Completely making that up, but I'm saying something like that certainly would make Saints fans, I think, excited.
Allen's done such a great job with the defense. He is a great play caller. He adjusts on the fly. Do you anticipate him having the dual duties, much like Sean Payton did with the offense on the defensive side, or will he delegate and have a defensive coordinator if he gets the job? Just your opinion.
Well, I think he's definitely going to hire a defensive coordinator in title. Now, whether that's the person calling the plays or not, I think only Dennis knows that. If he gets that job, I think he has to hire. I think the Saints, going back to your point earlier about the makeup of the staff, if Dennis Allen gets this job, I think the organization would be smart to look at a minority coordinator. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about it today. I don't know if the Saints have ever had a minority coordinator in either side of the ball in the history of the organization.
I don't think so.
And I think in this day and age, that would be a smart decision if you have somebody internally, and certainly Chris Richard, the defensive back coach who's been a coordinator, would be a candidate for that if Dennis Allen got the job.
As far as and look, Mickey couldn't even answer this yesterday, but it's a legitimate question. The direction they go with the quarterback. Obviously Jameis Winston is out there. He's still rehabbing the knee. Taysom Hill's coming off a knee injury, although again, in my opinion, I don't know if he's a starting quarterback in the league. But there's been a lot of rumblings about Teddy Bridgewater possibly coming back as well. That again, supposedly he is favored within the organization. What have you heard?
I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's gotten that far down the road. If you think about it, Sean Payton just stepped down a week ago. They had not had any personnel evaluations yet. And they just went through those this past week, and now they've been over in Mobile trying to hire a coach. So I think that's front and center. I think free agency meetings will be down the road. I don't think they have any idea what they're going to do at quarterback. But I think what Mickey said during our meeting with him was no stone will be unturned, and I think that's a proper way to view it. They will look at every option because they know that's the number one position on the field.
$71 million is now what they're saying. The Saints are over the cap. Nationally, they're making a big deal out of it. Locally, not so much because, again, Loomis has been able to maneuver around that in the past, setting up contracts when they sign those so that he has the flexibility to be able to get under the cap if necessary. It was difficult last year. How difficult do you believe it'll be this year?
I think it'll be very similar. I think they'll have a little better flexibility. But he said when we asked him about it that they're going to have very little margin for error, just like this past season, and it hurt them in some ways. I mean, they had to let Trey Hendrickson go, and we see the kind of year he's had, and some other veteran players I think they'd like to have on this roster they couldn't re-sign. They've got some, when you have a success like the Saints have had, because of the salary cap situation, really makes it difficult to keep that core together, and we're seeing that now. And they're going to have some difficult decisions. Teron Armstead is unrestricted free agent. Your starting left tackle, Pro Bowl level player. Marcus Williams, your free safety, your quarterback back in the deep end. You could franchise him. And then I think people are forgetting about Marcus Davenport, who they're very high on. He's still under contract one more year, but eventually you're going to have to do something with him long term.
Absolutely.
And Cam Jordan keeps getting older, so I think those three are big ticket items: pass rusher, safety, and your left tackle.
Jeff, how far do you believe this team is from getting back into the playoffs and getting back to contention for the Super Bowl, no matter who the coach is at this point?
Well, I don't think it matters as much with the coach. I think it matters the quarterback. We haven't even talked about if you sign, go out in free agency, or you bring in a trade. Say you trade for a Jimmy Garoppolo or somebody of that level. That's a $20 million ticket.
Right.
So that makes it difficult to do some of the other things. But I think this roster itself is easily playoff caliber if they could just get adequate quarterback play. I don't think there's any doubt about it, especially with the NFC South being wide open now without Brady. But the problem is now you've got another team in the division that's also in the quarterback market. That's an attractive position. If you're a quarterback, you look at Tampa.
Right.
I mean,
I went through it yesterday, and I went through it the day before on the show. They have so many free agents, that are critical to their team, and they may have some cap issues as well down the line here. So they're going to have a tough time. They're in a kind of position where the Saints were, where again they got a lot of players that they like to have back, but they have to manufacture cap room to be able to get those players back. So I'm interested to see again how that plays out. I don't think they're far away either. I think you got to backfill that offensive line, depending on what happens with Armstead. The quarterback is obviously important. Figure out what you can do at safety. P.J. Williams, Quan Alexander, I think they're a better fit here than elsewhere. But again, if ultimately they had to move on, I think there are players in place that can take those positions. So again, the strong defense, offensive line, again, was injured this year. Quarterback to me is the biggest need. And then you got to have a running back that can take some pressure off Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
And the wide receiver room is obviously the biggest need. But, a lot of people believe that Michael Thomas is going to come back. And that that's a position where you can fill fairly easily through the draft and maybe with a free agent.
Yeah, look, everything I heard in Mobile this week, Mike Thomas is back. They're not going to move him. So that's one position you don't have to worry about as far as your number one.
Right.
And then you can find a number two, I think, out there. And they'll be fine as long as Mike Thomas is there with Alvin Kamara. I'm with you on that. I think the roster is fine. I mean, they've got every team in the league's got holes here and there. Every team.
Right.
So it's not like, I think they've got some of the most difficult things down with the line play on both sides of the ball and the secondaries. I mean, a guy like Paulson Adebo, how he developed this year, that's now a strength.
Huge.
The cornerback is a strength of this team. Yeah. That's a thing we didn't know a year ago. Remember everybody was upset when they drafted Peyton Turner, who I've also heard this week is a guy they're very high on. They think he's going to be a star. So they didn't really get much out of him this year. So there's a lot of young players that maybe fans haven't heard about or seen much of that internally they're higher on. I know they're very high on Carl Granderson. His development each year has gotten a little bit better.
He has.
And so there's reason to be optimistic, but again, it comes back to the quarterback position for me.
Let's talk big picture NFL, especially with what's happened over the last couple of days, the lawsuit with Brian Flores against the NFL. A lot of things that happened there. One of the things that obviously stuck out was the Dolphins owner, Stephen Ross, offering him $100,000 to be able to lose games to tank. We find out from Hugh Jackson today he got a $750,000 bonus from the Browns, again, for the losses that he had that was in his contract, didn't know about it. The gambling is a big part of the NFL now. And they've got a credibility problem in my opinion when you start looking at those situations outside of the big issue which everyone is talking about today, which is again minority hiring and making sure that you have at least a fair number of minority head coaches to go along with the coordinators in the league. I've talked about on the radio show. I don't know how you move the owners in that direction. How you can force them. I think maybe the panacea to that is expanding the NFL and getting minority ownership in the NFL. I'd love to get your take.
Yeah, well, I think it all starts at ownership. Right. And that's part of the problem is you have these legacy owners that are all lacking diversity.
Absolutely.
So that's where it starts, the root of the problem. And I don't know how you get around that. I mean, how do you prevent Jerry Jones from handing down the Dallas Cowboys to his sons and his daughter? Yeah, so that I don't know if that's ever going to change.
Right.
But I do think, I've heard people say, would it be possible to open up to a bidding once a legacy owner moves on? Could they open it up? For instance, the New Orleans Saints are going to eventually, we all know, going to be sold. So I don't know the answer to that. I know the one thing that I 100% agree on is they need more diversity in the general manager ranks and the head coaching ranks. I think it's a little bit of an anomaly right now because only Mike Tomlin is employed, but it's because there's been a changing of the guard. Yes. So I do think there's a little bit of a timing issue there. But I don't know the answer to it. I don't. It's a complicated situation. It's not like the NFL has not tried to address it. I mean, they've had a minority coaching program for decades.
Yes.
I mean, it's been in place for decades, and there's plenty of minority coaches. I think we need to get more of them in the coordinator positions, which is usually how you end up being a head coach.
I would agree. But again, I don't know how you move those individuals who are, again, have been dead set in their ways for decades. You cannot stop a succession plan where, again, they're handing down the team to another family member. If anything, we've seen more female owners because of those succession issues here, issues in the NFL. But we don't have, again, the minority participation that really is necessary, considering 70% of the players are African American.
Right. And what I haven't seen yet, and I'd really like to see this number because I think the percentage of players number is used a lot, and it's a valid point because the players are being coached in this league. But I want to see what the percentages of coaches, of minority coaches. I mean, on the staffs, it's not that hard a number to get. I don't know why we haven't seen that because traditionally you're not hiring players all the time just to be the coach. I mean, a lot of players, I've talked to them, they don't want to coach.
No.
So
not in this day and age with the kind of money they're making.
Right. They don't want to coach. So let's figure out how many minority coaches we have on the staff and what that percentage is like, and find out how we can get more of them promoted into the positions of coordinator, because that's where they're going to get hired to be.
It's also an indictment on the collegiate ranks as well, where again you don't have as much African American participation, minority participation in terms of head coaches, etc. Where again you have the ability to maybe transition to pro football down the line.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see what's going to happen with the USFL going forward. The opportunities there, if that league can hang around, that maybe in the past, look, the USFL the first time around had a great influence on the NFL in a lot of ways. Changed the NFL in a lot of ways. Can this happen again the second time around, especially when it comes to minority hiring? Super Bowl, Bengals versus the Rams. Obviously, again, there's a very, very high contingent of ex-Saints, New Orleans bred, and of course LSU and Tulane players on the Bengals. Just a few on the Rams. Seems like Louisiana's behind the Bengals here. Your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game. I'm surprised it's these two teams. I did not see these two teams making it to the Super Bowl. I thought the Bengals would not be able to get over the hump against the Chiefs. Joe Burrow proved me wrong. I thought they made great adjustments at halftime. I think they've got every bit of a shot to win this game. I mean, the Rams, I did not expect to make it this far. Obviously, defensively, I think how well they can protect Joe Burrow is going to be a huge key to this game. But I don't know if the Rams have played the elite quarterbacks along the way that they're going to face. I mean, the balance of power in the NFL has all gone to the AFC at the quarterback position. And so there's much more elite quarterback play over there than there is in the NFC. And I think the Bengals have a real strong shot to win that game because of Burrow, because he's so good.
I agree.
And I think everybody in Louisiana knows that. And I think the United States and America is starting to discover just what kind of rare talent he is.
Are you surprised by how quickly he has adapted to the NFL and the command of his offense, the ability to be able to, I mean, look, he's precocious in terms of, again, his ability so far with a year and a half. Remember, he was injured halfway through last season. He didn't get a full season in. He goes to LSU his first year, he's kind of okay, and then all of a sudden, he is the best player on the planet in college football when you talk about his senior year at LSU. And there seems to be, again, a duplication of that when you look at what he's done with the Bengals in year 2 as a pro.
I'm not surprised at all. He's a son of a coach, so he knows the game.
True.
He's always been advanced as far as offensive systems are concerned. I think Zach Taylor and his staff have done a really good job too of figuring out what he's good at. And I think the other thing that's surprising a little bit for him, at least for me, is he's been much more athletic than I think a lot of people thought. I mean, he converted a lot of big third downs in that game against the Chiefs.
It was smart for him to do that, though.
Right. No, it was big.
Right.
I think people forget. I mean, we saw that at LSU, and he's a good athlete.
Right.
And he runs when he needs to, and he certainly can do it. And I just think, we all in Louisiana know it because we saw what he did at LSU. And I just think he's doing the exact same thing with the Bengals. And look, preseason, a little humble brag here. I mean, I wrote a column in the Picayune saying I felt like the Bengals were going to be the surprise team in the league. I didn't think they'd be in a Super Bowl surprise. I thought it would be a natural progression, maybe challenge for the division. That was what I thought, but they've exceeded expectations. I think they've done a great job defensively. I thought they had a really good offseason bolstering that defense. And they're going to be scary, Eric. I mean, once they fix their offensive line, they're going to be scary with that receiving core they have.
I would be surprised, again, to see Teron Armstead in the mix over there at the end of the day. Look, they need help on that offensive line. And I think that's the key to the Super Bowl. The ability of Joe Burrow to deal with, again, the pass rush of the Los Angeles Rams.
Right. And who can run the ball? I mean, neither team has really had dominant running games so far, but I think running the ball, taking the pressure off Burrow is going to be important. They really haven't had a chance to do that. He's carried them.
Yes.
But also, I think turnovers. I think the Bengals can force some Rams. If I were a betting man, and I'm not, but if somebody forced me to bet that game, I would definitely bet the Bengals just because I feel like they're underdogs right now. They've been underdogs the whole way, and that's that chip on their shoulder mentality's carried them.
And I don't want to downplay Jamar Chase's what he has done for that offense as well. Obviously, they have a connection, but he is almost unstoppable. The physicality, his hands, his speed, his ability to be able to run the ball out the backfield. I mean, again, he is as good of a wide receiver that's come out of the college ranks in a long, long time.
Yeah, and we saw that. I remember, when we saw him at LSU, there was really no weakness.
No, none.
And I think it speaks volumes about the talent level here when we got Odell Beckham Jr. on one team, a New Orleans product, and another New Orleans product from Rummel on the Bengals. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yep, no doubt about it. All right, we're gonna stop it right there in terms of pro football. We're going to take a break, hear from our underwriters. When we come back, we'll talk some Pels. We'll talk LSU and Tulane football. We'll also get into collegiate basketball. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight is Jeff Duncan of Noel.com, the Times-Picayune, the Advocate, and also Fox 8 Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Jeff Duncan of NOLA.com and also Fox 8 Sports is our guest. Jeff, let's talk. Let's go college first, and we'll get back to the Pelicans as we get ready to close out. LSU yesterday completed their recruiting class, first one under Brian Kelly. It's the 6th-rated class under 24/7 Sports. But a little different situation that we've seen in terms of National Signing Day and also recruitment this time around as opposed to the history of the NCAA. With the NIL in place now, the transfer portal, it's completely changed the face of college athletics. When you look at National Signing Day yesterday, a lot of the teams that were ready with NIL money were able to outbid other teams, okay, for the services of collegiate athletes. LSU was not ready, was not prepared in a lot of cases. You saw a place like Texas A&M that had $30+ million get the #1 recruiting class, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that they were able to negotiate deals with these young athletes in order to go to Texas A&M. Now, look, because of the face of college athletics has changed, it really means nothing because, again, you almost have to re-recruit that player constantly because of the transfer portal and the possibility if they're not getting playing time that they move on. Now, maybe, again, the money may be something to be able to hold on to, hold them to, but, again, they might be able to get that money with another university. So what we've looked at in terms of National Signing Day and, how, again, you build a team in terms of college football has completely changed within the year.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's pretty clear the college sports landscape has changed dramatically.
Right.
The days of being considered an amateur sport are over.
Nope.
It's become professionalized. Players have become monetized, and I don't think it's going anywhere but in the other direction,
yes,
away from amateurism. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be difficult to see how this plays out. We're early in this. A lot has changed in college sports the last 2 years with the transfer portal, and now you got NIL. It's all these sea changes all at one time, convergence of really impactful policy that I think everyone's trying to figure out. The NCAA, the coaches, the players, families, and I think it's going to eventually sort itself out. But right now, it's just kind of the Wild West, and eventually the market influences are going to settle down. We're going to figure out, I think, some type of normalcy, but right now we don't know that. I have so many questions about how this is going to play out with players getting these contracts, and if they don't pan out, are they still going to fulfill their contracts? I mean, if you get a player, I'll give you a good example, like a John Emery, who came out highly recruited out of Destrehan, has not really had an impact at LSU. If he were to earn a big NIL contract, what's happened
is that company pulling the contract.
Right. How does that work? Or is there influence by the NIL, the company that's paying that prospect? Do they influence the coach to play that player?
That's a great point.
There's all kinds of things that I think are going to play out. And my bigger concern is down the road, does this eventually just start to trickle down to high schools? And do we start seeing high school athletes get paid? And I don't know where it stops.
One interesting point what was brought up this week, a story about Grambling. And Grambling has two companies, minority companies, that are willing to be able to have an NIL program for every student athlete that attends Grambling. So everyone's going to get a piece of the pie instead of what we're seeing with, again, some of the major universities where the stars, the so-called stars, or the highly rated players are getting the NIL. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I kind of like that better,
Me too.
To be honest with you, because I think I was at this conversation with Archie Manning recently, and Archie's admittedly old school, and I'm a little bit leaning old school in this regard, but he's worried about the internal politics in the locker room, and I think that'll eventually sort itself out, but I also can see concerns for that. And certain players getting paid more, it's a market, but I don't know if college football, Nick Saban had some really strong points about it. And I think he made a great point of the strong are only going to keep getting stronger, the rich get richer, and Alabama's always going to come out on top.
Sure, of course.
Because players are going to want to play there.
Right.
And, this transfer portal, it's only going to make more players want to go to the elite programs. And I don't know how you reverse it now, where we're at.
There has to be some type of controls on this. You cannot be able to. They have to stop the ability to get into the transfer portal within the season. There has to be at least a timeline of when you can transfer out. You can't be having guys that they're upset with the coach, they're not playing, and all of a sudden I'm out, okay, in the middle of the season. And then the NIL thing, you got to get a handle on it, okay? Again, how is this money going to be distributed? Will it be every athlete across the board that again is attending the school is only going to be the stars? Is there a cap on NIL on what can be made? Because you've got schools like Texas A&M that have oil money and have the ability to maybe verse maybe a Tulane. That again maybe will never have an opportunity like that just within their own conference. I mean, again, you can't tell me LSU doesn't have, when you're able to pay coaches millions of dollars to go away, that you don't have the boosters with the wherewithal to be able to pay these NIL money to NIL to these student athletes. But I think that at some point you've got to get a control on how this is going to be distributed.
Yeah, and I think it's all evolving.
Right.
And I think there's so much more that we're going to see down the road with universities getting organized and how they come up with this. But basically what's going on here is the college has become professional sports.
It is, no doubt.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I'm not sure that was the intention of this, but certainly I think the NCAA has washed its hands of it because they've been criticized so much over the years about not paying players. I think they said, okay, let's just let this thing free market dictate, and we'll see how it plays out. And right now, I think it's chaos. It's almost a circus.
I personally do not object to NIL, paying players, or the ability of players to be able to move on, okay, and to be able to transfer. I just think there has to be controls on what's going on right now. You mentioned, I said on my radio show the other day, it's the Wild Wild West right now.
Right.
It's out of control.
Yeah, and I think that's what Nick Saban was getting at the other day. There's got to be some form of legislation, some sort of
there's got to be some rules,
parameters,
right.
Because you can't just have players being able to transfer every year. It's going to create all kinds of uncertainty with coaching staffs and retention. But I do think players need the flexibility to be able to find a better fit for them if they don't like it.
True.
So I like that too, but within reason.
Right. And it's hard also to have somebody transfer within the conference. That's tough.
Well, yeah, right. But there's just, I just think it's creating more and more policy, more and more pressure on the NCAA to try and legislate and rule over all this at one time. I just don't know where we're going to see the end of it.
Just quickly, your thoughts. 6th rated class by 24/7. Others have it rated lower. Brian Kelly gets in late, used the transfer portal, and honestly, between the early signing period and the national signing period, did a pretty good job in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's ever going to have any trouble recruiting at LSU. I think they're always going to be a top 5 class. Any coach there should recruit in the top 5, top 10. It's the state school. Every player in the state wants to go there. He's always been a good recruiter. My problem always has been with LSU is retaining players.
Yes.
And, Ed Ogeron had a top 5 class every year. How'd that work out, the last few years? So
retention and development.
Yeah, right. You've got to, it's not just getting athletes and talent, it's what are you doing with these players, and are they producing, are they staying in school and being a part of the team? It's great to win signing day, but how's it manifesting itself on the back end?
And also, again, this is an old adage, but Brian Kelly came in too late to put the fence around Louisiana. Alabama came in and got, I think, top 4 of the top players in Louisiana. He's got to rebuild that fence. I think he will. I also think, again, he's going to use his ties to the Midwest. You're going to see big-time offensive lines and defensive lines at LSU. LSU's always had some great athletic defensive lines, but big guys. I think we're going to start seeing that tunnel's going to come to Louisiana now because of Brian Kelly.
Yeah, and look, Brian Kelly put together a really good staff. He's got great recruiters. Frank Wilson's the best recruiter in college football. So I'm not worried about him getting back in control of Louisiana, especially with Frank there. It's going to be a matter of, can he build that brand nationally, because that's really what you have to do now to supplement the Louisiana kids.
Tulane did well, very well. Rivals had them 68th. fifth in the ACC, third best finish by a Fritz team in his 8 classes at Tulane. They say it's the 4th best finish since Rival has been grading these classes since 2002. He used the transfer portal to his advantage, getting a lot of kids that grew up in New Orleans or the New Orleans area, went to high school here, that went to other big schools that maybe didn't work out for him. He took advantage of those kids coming back, and he did pretty well. Again, Florida, Texas, and Louisiana were his spots in terms of, again, going out and recruiting.
Yeah, and that's always going to be the home territory for Tulane, is that region, kind of the Gulf Coast region. And it's been a point of emphasis. They know they have to improve recruiting, but I do think there's a way, and I think they figured it out with that transfer portal, to get some of these kids, like you said, that have moved on, but maybe homesick or want to come back home or didn't like the fit where they were at.
Sure.
I think that's certainly going to be an opportunity. I also think, frankly, the fact that Louisiana, lost Billy Napier, that they were getting a lot of kids that Tulane was also recruiting.
That is a great point.
And now that he's not there, I think that helps Tulane a lot, because a lot of these kids were bolstering those classes in Louisiana.
I think that's a great point. Gerald Chapman is the new defensive line coach. He comes over from LSU as an analyst. The new offensive coordinator is Jim Swoboda, who again was at Central Michigan. Your thoughts on those hires?
Yeah, look, I know it was somebody that Willie Fritz knew he needed. It's a critical hire. He's got Michael Pratt coming back. They've got a lot of talent on offense. Losing Chip Long to Georgia Tech was a blow after 1 year. Now they're on their 3rd coordinator. Michael Pratt's going to be playing on his 3rd coordinator in 3 years. Right. He needs somebody that has some stability at the offensive coordinator position, and Swoboda comes highly regarded, a guy that I think is a good fit culturally here at Tulane too. But if you can't coach for Willie Fritz, you can't coach for anybody. Right. I mean, he's one of the best bosses you can have, and he also has a great eye for talent. So I'll be interested to see if they change up much with the offense, because they've got a lot of skill position players coming back on that side of the ball. I
think it shows a lot about Fritz and the program and the stability that Michael Pratt did not enter the transfer portal.
Right. And I think he's loyal, and I like that about him. And I think he knows they've got some unfinished business. That the season did not go the way they wanted last year. It was kind of a transition, rebuilding year. But I can see why he would want to come back. He's been in the system a while. You transfer, you're going to unknown.
Sure.
And we didn't talk about this when we talked about the transfer portal, but there's a dark side to that.
Oh, yeah.
And that is that a lot of these kids don't get scholarships after they leave.
They don't.
Actually, the majority of them don't. So
they have to go down to a division. In a lot of cases. They're going to
the
FCS.
same level. Right. So I think the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now that is the chance you take. We saw this mass exodus from LSU. Some of these kids landed at Nebraska and other places where other coaches went that coached them. But again, the vast majority of these players don't end up back with a Division I school. They end up with FCS and maybe in a situation that was maybe not as good for them. Now, look, the NFL will find them anywhere, right?
Right.
But it's not what, again, maybe they thought they were signing up for.
Yeah, and look, sometimes it's better for them. They get to a smaller school, and you can get more playing time and develop maybe more.
Right.
So sometimes the fit might be better at a lower level and a better, more comfort level for them. So that's what the transfer portal should be about. But sometimes I think kids are meeting a little adversity, unhappy, and they're bolting at the first sign of that. And I'm not sure that's the answer.
And that's the one thing about the old transfer rule, having to sit out a year. You had to think a minute before you end up jumping into that pool and moving on.
Right.
Okay. Now again, things don't go your way. You're having a bad week. That's why I think these things need to be done at the end of the season, not in season. But Jeff, you and I love college basketball. You come from Louisville, again, a tradition of great college basketball. This might be the best year of college basketball locally that maybe we've seen in decades. You've got Tulane that's 9-10 right now, 6-4. They're 4th place in the American. They had a tough road loss last night to Houston, who's the 6th-ranked team in the nation, 73-62. UNO is the class of the Southland Conference so far. They're 12-8. They're 5-0. They're in 1st place there. Loyola is 3rd in the NAIA with 1 loss. They're 17-1, 7-1 in their conference. And LSU look like, and look, they're still going to be a tournament team, but they look like they were going to be a top team in the tournament before, again, injuries beset them. They're 25th, probably going to drop out of the top 25 this week, but they're 16-6. They're 4-5 in the conference. They lost 5 of their last 6. They look like they're getting the shoe-in to get into the NCAA tournament, with some really good basketball being played here locally right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's the best year we've had. And I have to admit, Tulane and UNO surprised me.
Right.
When I had to do my crystal ball column,
Sure.
I did not have them doing nearly as well. They've turned it on in conference play, both of them.
Yes.
And I asked Mark Schlesinger about UNO recently, and he said, look, it just took us a while to gel. We lost some games because of COVID. You know, we didn't get to play, so it took us a while to gel. And they've really come on. Like you said, I think they're the class of the Southland. That's good to see. I mean,
They added size to the guard play they had.
Yes. Done a tremendous job there.
Yeah.
And we all know Mark Schlesinger.
Yes, he's a great coach.
But what Ron Hunter has done at Tulane has just been tremendous. I mean, he's brought a lot of energy and enthusiasm. That's what Troy Dannon wanted, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to see him. Jalen Cook clearly is a guy that could help LSU right now.
Right, you're not kidding.
They needed. I mean, my concern when I watched LSU early on, even when they were playing well and started with that just one loss, their guard play concerned me, and we're seeing it come back to haunt them right now. They make a lot of mistakes, a lot of turnovers.
Right.
When they went to Auburn that game, I mean, it was ugly.
Offense is a struggle for them.
Yeah, their guard play really needs. I think that's going to ultimately be what decides how far they go.
Yeah.
But certainly they're in a little bit of a tailspin right now.
Yeah, and I left out Xavier, who has a really good basketball team as well.
Yep.
NAIA, so really good basketball. Now the question is, will fans go out and see it? We saw 2,500 at Fulgham the other day. Of course, Ron Hunter brought breakfast for everybody.
Right.
You know, it's been a long time since folks have gone out to UNO and filled that arena. Obviously, Loyola's up and coming there. Hopefully, again, look, I grew up at a time where we went and watched college basketball. It just doesn't happen. A lot of that has to do with, so many games on TV, having a pro team in the city. But there's some really good college basketball being played right now.
I would like to see more. The programs need to be there needs to be an investment in the programs. It feels like they've been neglected for a while. But I've always said Tulane has a sleeping giant there. Fulgham can be the biggest home court advantage in their conference, no doubt about it. That little cracker box, when you get it filled up, is intimidating.
We remember
for
Perry Clark years.
Yes,
right.
That place it can be like a Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Right.
And I think Ron Hunter's getting that back, getting that enthusiasm back. They're a fun team to watch, and it's nothing better than a great college basketball environment in a conference situation where it's intense.
Right, we were blessed at one time. Dale Brown in Baton Rouge, Tim Floyd out at UNO, Perry Clark at Tulane.
Yep.
I mean, really, really good coaches. We're along that same lines again. Let's shift gears to the Pelicans. 19 of 32, 11th place, or 2 games out of the 10th spot. They had a winning month in December, 7-5, 5-10 in January. They're 4-6 in their last 10. There's a lot of conversation right now. They're going to be buyers at the trading deadline. Trading deadline is February the 10th, 2 p.m. New Orleans time. There's been a lot of talk about C.J. McCollum, that maybe Portland is going to shelve it, tank, especially with Lillard out. He may be on the market. The question is what you have to spend to be able to get him. Another thing that was mentioned, which I cannot even believe this name was even mentioned in the city of New Orleans, was Eric Gordon. Again, I've got to believe that Griff, Langdon, Trajan Langdon understand the hatred toward Eric Gordon in this town after, again, his first stop here, and that wouldn't be on anybody's radar at this point. But McCollum is an interesting player considering what he could bring to the team even when Zion comes back.
Yeah, well, I think he's a great fit as far as what they need. Leadership, outside shooting, a lot of things, spacing for when Zion comes back. So I think you're going to get, a quality player if you can get C.J. McCollum. I think that's the key is what other offers are they getting?
And what do you have to give up?
You're going to have to give up some of your young assets, draft picks. And
how do you feel about that? Let me say this, Jeff. Some people are down on Jackson Hayes and Nikhil Alexander-Walker. I've always said those kids, Noah was at Virginia Tech for 2 years. Texas, Jackson Hayes was at Texas for 1 year. These kids are infants in the NBA right now. They've gone through 3 coaches, 3 systems. They show some raw talent. I don't know if I'm willing to give up on those kids early, at this point. The other one is Josh Hart. Look, he's the heart and soul of this team. So again, other teams, again, when they're talking possible trade, if they're asking for these players, they consider them assets. And I don't know if I'm David Griffin at this point, where if I want to give up on some of these young players who are cheaper, but also have a tremendous upside. I'd be more inclined to give up the draft picks that you've gotten from the Bucks and the Lakers, rather than, again, reaching in and giving up some of your young players.
Well, it's going to take something to get something.
I agree.
Right. So, I mean, you got to give up something. And to get a C.J. McCollum, you're going to have to give up a lot.
Right.
And so it's going to come down to, how bad do you want him? I think the bigger question is, does C.J. McCollum fit into the timeline of the rest of the roster? He's an older player toward the end of his NBA career.
Makes big money.
And he's a guy that's going to be descending soon.
Right.
And if you're David Griffin, is it that important to get into the playoffs this year?
I agree.
Part of my issue right now is that everyone's talking about every year, it seems like, Eric, every year it seems like, are we going to get the 10 seed? Are we going to get the 9? That shouldn't be the goal here. The Pelicans are as close to the bottom of the conference as they are the 10 seed.
Yes.
Almost. So let's get some perspective here. Trying to build a championship roster, and that should be the goal, not just to sneak into the playoffs to say we got in and create a little enthusiasm and get eliminated after one series.
I think there's a byproduct of that is the fear that Zion's going to walk. And I've talked about it on both this show and the radio show. They have his rights for the next few years. They have right of first refusal. Even if he refuses to sign an extension this summer, okay, they still hold his rights at this point. And, you do what you got to do. I don't know if I'm giving him an extension this summer. Now, they may be forced to. And then the other part of it is some people feel that maybe David Griffin feels like he's got to make a splash here, get in the playoffs to be able to hold on to his job. And I'm saying you got to look at the long game now with this team. You can't look at, again, the short game, saying that we need to get into the playoffs to again, suffice maybe a Griffin within the organization or a Zion and his family about possibly re-signing.
Yeah, look, I don't think if the Pels get in with the 10 seed, that's going to suddenly tilt the scales in Zion Williamson's court.
I agree.
I don't think he's making that decision based on that. And now I think organizationally, ownership, management, they have to look at what's going on that side of the building and say, do we want to make a big splash here for a short-term fix, just to get in the playoffs and say we got the 10 seed?
And I think that's bad management.
Right. This has got to be a big picture, long-term vision here about what they're doing. They've got a superstar talent who's had a lot of issues early on here. Is he on board? Is his camp on board? Is Jordan Brand? Is his stepfather? There's a lot of complicated, people in his camp. How is that playing out for the long-term future? Because that's the ultimate decision here, whether they go forward with Zion Williamson or they have to make a deal, including him, in the offseason.
What could possibly happen.
Right.
No doubt about it. Jeff, always appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Jeff Duncan, again, NOLA.com, Times-Picayune Advocate, and also Fox 8 Sports. And don't forget again about his great books at a bookstore near you. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Plenty of ways to catch our program now with our rebroadcast. We're really blessed with the number of ways you can catch this program. Our first rebroadcast tonight is 6 p.m. right here on LAE, 10 p.m. on The Deuce, WLAE-TV 2, 9 o'clock tomorrow night, every Friday night on Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock right back here on WLAE. Saturday morning at 2 a.m. on The Deuce, Saturday afternoon at 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television. Always at ericasher.com, always on our social media platforms, at Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook, Inside New Orleans Show on Instagram, and always on the WLAE-TV YouTube page where you can see previous shows as well. Also want to remind everybody I'm on the radio each and every weekday afternoon, 4 to 6 on 106.1 FM. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, again, the TuneIn app, the iHeart app, and of course, our podcast is everywhere. Anchor is our home base. We're on all podcasting platforms. Also want to thank our great underwriters who, again, make this show possible. Thanks so much to the underwriters. Please support our underwriters. And, of course, the WLA production staff who make this show possible, so I'll do a great job, including Logan Graffia, also Alex Chacon, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, and my director, William Hill. For Jeff Duncan, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.